We all know that Sprunki is a unique game with singing characters who are thrown into a terrifying world, with every new mod getting scarier than the last. But what if we could save all the Spunky? Would they all live? What would they look like? Let's see in a version of the game where everyone survives. We see a typical scene with a soundtrack, but even here, for some reason, all the characters seem afraid of something. Let's examine each character to see what happened to them. Beginning with Oren, he was a good-hearted and happy character who had no enemies or people who wanted to hurt him. However, as we know from the horror version of the game, Wenda tore him apart. Let's examine how he might have survived what happened to him. We see a sad Oren who is no longer happy but is still alive. His body is bandaged where his wound was, and he is saved, but his face indicates that he has gone through something horrifying. As we know, the second person to die was Ratty. He committed suicide because of intense inner anguish, which Wenda caused him. Even though this is a happy ending for him, he still looks angry. I believe he is angry at Wenda and may even be planning revenge next time death comes. He insulted him, saying that the world would be better without him and that he was worthless. What can we see in the happy version where he survived? I'm so glad he's alive. He wanted to make the world a better place. He wanted to build new homes for the characters. He wanted to place spaces for everyone to enjoy. However, an accident occurred on the building site. I believe that Wenda was also responsible for his death. She may have pushed him from a height, causing serious head trauma. Now let's see what happens if he is saved. Like the others who survived, his head is bandaged and he is alive, which is fantastic, but he shows no emotion. Perhaps the severe injury has left him permanently depressed. Funbot failed to handle Wenda's abuse of the others, and most likely fell into a deep despair in the version where he survived, and appears nearly identical to the original version when things were still going well. But I believe he will never be as happy as he was, because the atrocities he saw are now permanently carved in his memory. The Veneria. Although she appears calm and healthy in the updated version, her eyes are closed. Perhaps they can be saved, but she needs time to heal without opening them. The sprout that was growing on her head started to root into her skull, obtaining nutrition from her blood and hair. She will therefore be fine in this version of the game, but in another, Veneria lives, but she will never be able to see her again. What are your thoughts on that? Please share them in the comments section. In the horror version of the game, Gray was able to hide at first, but Wenda discovered him and seriously injured his head. In the new version, Gray is still alive and terrified, but even though all the characters in this version survived, he is still cautious of danger. What happened to Brood, we know for sure. Simon, his brother, tried to kill him several times by biting his head and then his body. However, despite the severe injuries we see in the horror version, Brood survived. So what's his story? In the happy ending, we see Brood alive, his body free of bandages, and his wounds look quite different from those of the others. I have a theory that his body heals itself, and his wounds seem to be regenerating. I think he'll fully recover soon, that the lips and left eye are now wounded by pressure and glass fragments. But we can tell that he is fine because there is no blood on his neck and his eye is unharmed. However, like the other survivors, he doesn't appear joyful. It's difficult to go through something like that and simply resume your normal life. Wenda tore away CX's face and body in an unbridled act of savagery, causing him to die violently and horribly. However, in the most recent version of the game, he returns looking nearly identical to his former self, with the exception of a minor color shift. His face and eyes seem to have been miraculously restored. But how could he have withstood such a vicious attack and escaped unharmed? I have a theory that Gray might have stepped in just in time to restrain Wenda and stop the fatal attack, saving Ooks from a grisly end. What do you think? What about Sky? Wenda caused him excruciating anguish by driving 4 rods into his body and torturing him without showing him mercy. Despite the constant suffering, the Sky has somehow fully returned, recovered, and seemingly in a stable state. Even though he appears unhappy, his head is heavily bandaged, with one side completely covered to conceal any visible wounds. It is a comfort that he is still alive, and we hope that he continues to heal quickly and regains all of his vigor. Next, let's explore Mr. Sun's narrative. In the first version, we witnessed him being pushed into becoming an accomplice by Black, But in the alternate version, where everyone escapes, Mr. Sun appears to be utterly unaffected, as if the Dark Alliance never occurred. We're seeing a world in which Mr. Sun completely refused to be influenced by Black. Next, we have Derpal, who we saw in a previous video suffered a terrible fate and broke both his jaw and neck. In this survival version, he appears to be fully recovered, with his jaw and, most importantly, his neck fully restored. In this case, he didn't become an enemy or contribute to the harm of others, even though he still has a dejected expression. Mr. Tree's face was nailed to a missing post, making him carry the weight of shame all the time over a young girl from Dayton, Ohio, went missing. And in a recent video, we shared a theory about her and even discovered a real-world connection. If you haven't seen that theory yet, watch it on our channel right now to see the alternate happy ending where everyone survives. Her name is McKenna May. Mr. Tree is distinct. He stands calmly, almost grinning, and has bright green leaves. There is no poster attached. Thus, it appears the mod creator may be implying something more profound. Perhaps the return of the lost girl is connected to Mr. Tree's happiness? If so, it's a really hopeful conclusion. And I'd love to think that this is the planned resolve. Let's move on to Simon in the dark plot. Although Simon eventually took his own life to sate his hunger, the new, happier version of Simon shows him completely changed, as if the darkness within him has completely disappeared. Simon was so consumed by hunger that he even bit his brother Brood, but fortunately, Brood survived. In the horror version, he somehow survived, but it seemed like he saw everything desperately trying to warn us. But Black ended up silencing him for good in this altered version. Although Mr. Fun Computer is calm, almost subdued, the once energetic and cheerful screen we knew now only displays a neutral image. Now he's a typical character with complete control over his impulses and no intention of harming anyone. It's a remarkable change that shows a side of Simon free from his primal, dangerous urges, a neutral expression with just one note remaining. Do you think he still feels the need to tell what he saw? It seems like he has something he needs to say, even if it's silently. After going insane or being tricked by Black, Wenda became Black's weapon and killed nearly every character. However, now that everyone is alive, Wenda isn't happy at all. I believe this is because she prefers the horror version where she could kill characters. Here, she felt amazing. When Wenda begins to sing, we catch a glimpse of her smile, but it's most likely a mirage. Since this is the happy ending, Wenda is attempting to conceal her actual emotions behind this false grin. But as soon as she finishes singing, we can see her true feelings. Please share your thoughts in the comments section, subscribe to the channel, and like the video. How could the Sprunks have survived? Who saved them?